Okay, good morning, everyone. It's a very pretty April 21st morning here in Georgia, and I am with gubernatorial candidate Amanda Duffy. Amanda, how are you doing this morning?
Well, thanks. How are you, Tom?
I'm all right. I'm doing all right. Like I said, we were talking a little bit before. We are talking about how it's been cold, but now it's starting to warm up again. This is more my weather. As I've gotten older, I can't take this cold weather anymore. I want it to be warm. I think I'm going to move to Arizona one day. I guess. I don't know. So how's it over there in Augusta or close to Augusta?
Chilly in the mornings and better in the afternoons.
Yeah, that kind of sounds like here too. So, all right. Well, like I said, I appreciate you stopping by this morning, chatting with us, and all the viewers are going to see this. So, what I typically do to get these things underway is I ask the candidate to give just a minute or two, or however long you feel is necessary. Give a little bit about your background, you, the person, family, whatever you want to talk about that you think is relevant. So I'm going to turn the screen over to you now and let you do that. Go ahead.
My name is Amanda Duffy. I am not originally from the South. I'm originally born and raised in New Jersey. My husband and I relocated to Georgia and have lived here since. Uh, Gosh, it has to be almost 10 years ago now. Um, we uh, focused first on his career, and he is a firefighter. Um, our we didn't start our family until a little bit later in life. So I am 38, which is, I know, not stereotypical of other Southern women, but it has given me a lot of experience. Um, we have twin girls who were born about 4.5 years ago, and they are neurodivergent. As a mom, postpartum, I was able to figure out through their diagnoses that I am also neurodivergent. Um, and so learning to manage all of that has been tricky. Um, Over the past few years, I've also had a lot of medical issues that I've had to advocate for both myself and for my tiny humans. And that has been a struggle, but it taught me a lot. I had a spinal fluid leak that leaked into my veins that no one in this area could help me with. And ultimately, I ended up going to Duke University in North Carolina to have that fixed. Um, but like I said, that whole experience taught me a great deal about advocating for myself and never taking no for an answer, never giving up. My resiliency was very well learned the hard way.
Mhm.
And so that has helped me a lot. And part of why I think I will make a good governor. In addition, I feel like it's necessary to mention that throughout my tiny human's life of 4.5 years, my husband has worked more hours than normal than when before we had kids because we were struggling to make ends meet being on the lower middle class end of the spectrum. And
Yeah.
so he worked two jobs back to back, which was 48 hours total, and then was home for 24 and then went back to work again. So I did a lot of solo parenting under those conditions, and we do not have a lot of family support in the area. We relocated here because we fell in love with the area. And though my in laws are physically here, they were not willing to help as much as we initially thought. And so that was also some significant lessons learned. But
Right.
I think in surviving all of that and getting to this point, socially, politically, where I feel I could help make a difference. My career background is in accounting departments for construction companies. And so I'm very familiar with trying to make a little out of nothing and extending the use of a dollar. And so I feel like
Yeah.
that will help me a lot in this particular career choice.
Okay, well, thank you for sharing that with us. And sometimes the best lessons, as far as learning, are the hard ones, unfortunately.
Absolutely.
I'm glad that you've been able to persevere and get through
Yeah.
the ones that you've had to face. And so now here we are, and you're running for governor. You explained a little bit why specifically governor that you're running for. What is it about that office that makes you choose that one?
Specifically, the governor position I felt was where I could make the most difference for the issues that I find the most pressing. Um, on a local level, there's not much that I really feel invested in. Um,
Right.
other than something as simple as adding fences to some of the local playgrounds, which don't have any fences. Um,
Right.
there's other than that, there's not much that I would really want to change or feel called to work really hard at to change. The governorship would be something where I feel like I could make the most difference. Um, but I know you have questions about my issues, my platform, so I'll wait to discuss that. But
Well, I mean, yeah, we can. You can go ahead and move right into that if you like,
okay,
but because sometimes those two things are kind of tied together.
they are.
It's the issues that drive you while you run and so forth. So go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah.
Um, so my main concern will be the changing the tax system.
Mhm.
Right now, our tax system has relatively recently, within the past few years, been changed to I believe it's termed a progressive tax system where it's flat rate. And so I believe the reason that they did that was because they didn't want to put the work into adjusting, figuring out what the right amounts would be to keep the tiered bracket system. It was old and extremely outdated, and the highest bracket was no more than $10,000. So everyone was ultimately paying the same amount anyway.
Right.
And I think they just didn't want to put the work in. I am willing to put the work in because I don't believe that it's fair that a household like mine that doesn't make more than 60,000 annually pays the same amount in taxes as a family making over 200,000 annually. So
Mhm.
I feel like evening the scales a little bit, paying something that's more appropriate to the income that's being taken home will help put money back in the pockets of the Georgians who are struggling on the day to day, who are really feeling the hurt with gas prices and groceries and all the rest of the daily financial issues, everything that's so expensive right now. Um, Changing that system to something from a flat rate to moving back to a more accurately, uh, numbers wise, more accurately representative of today's incomes. And going back to a tiered bracket system, I feel like will help with the funding, um, giving more funds to the state for the purpose of the other issue that I'm really passionate about, education. I feel like there's a lot of changes that we could make to better improve the education system for all the children in Georgia. And I feel like that will help offset. I know some people might be upset about the tax system changing. So I feel like that might help offset their unhappiness.
Right.
um, with the education system, I'm looking forward to putting a plan in place that will address the location issues and the funding issues for expanding and building upon the pre-K program, which
Mhm.
is wonderful and fantastic, but I feel like we can even make it better. And I'm looking forward to addressing that and putting a plan in place that will ultimately open that up to be not just accessible to all kids of that age, but guaranteed spots for all the kids of that age, truly universal. Um, the other thing I'm looking forward to working with the Department of Education on specifically is we've, in the past few years, I've noticed because my tiny humans are not yet of school age. They are in pre-K right now, going into kindergarten in the fall. And so looking at what our options are as far as where to send them to kindergarten and looking at scholarships for private schools and things like that, it's clunky. It's a clunky system.
All right.
I'm even talking to parents of older students who are currently in the system, currently taking the classes and, working through their elementary school years. I've noticed that there's a significant struggle for a lot of kids in the curriculum that's been chosen over the past few years, that we've switched from this more repetition style learning to something that's more conceptual, applying the concepts. And it seems like a lot of kids struggle with one or the other. And so, what I'm
Right.
hoping to do is work with the Department of Ed to create a two-track system where at a certain grade level, we could assess what track they learn best on and put them on that track so they have better chance of success instead of working with a foundation that they don't understand. They're struggling with foundational concepts, and then third and fourth grade, they're floundering because they didn't actually learn it the best way for them, right? So we're cookie cuttering for all students, but if we created a two-track system that allowed for both options, repetition and applying the concepts as two different learning tracks, that might also help not just neurotypical students, but also neurodiverse ones, and hopefully help us catch neurodivergence for some students before it's a problem.
Right.
The other thing I'm looking forward to with education is adding in a social emotional learning aspect to the curriculum. I feel
Right.
like ultimately that will help with this other issue that I really care about, which is the bullying in schools as a preventative measure to help associate this understanding of emotions, all these things that socially, big picture, broad spectrum, nationally, we've sort of attributed to, okay, all these kids are going to traditional religious places. They're going to church, they're going to synagogue, they're going to wherever, or they're in programs like Girl Scouts or Boy Scouts or something like that, or 4-H. And not everybody is. It's not as
Right.
popular anymore. And so I feel
Right.
like if we can integrate that into the public education system, then we have a fighting chance to prevent bullying, or at least lessen how much that is drastically pushing people out of the public system. Because I've noticed that there's some of the research that I did when I was looking at what I wanted my stances to be on everything, that seemed to be a really big reason as to why families were switching to homeschooling, which lower class
Right.
people can't afford. So
Right.
adding that into the curriculum would, I think, really help all children.
Okay.
The
Well, thank you.
issues I care about the most.
Well, that's and they're great issues because the tax system affects everybody. That's how the state gets its revenue. And
Yeah.
just to summarize, you are wanting the income tax to be more progressive than it currently is, which essentially now it's flat.
Yeah.
It has a little micro steps down at the bottom, and then it just flattens out. And so yeah, you want a more progressive tax system and a school system that is more responsive to the diverse needs of students. I was a teacher for 24 years before I retired, and I can testify. Now I was at the high school, but we have long known that people have multiple intelligences, multiple ways of thinking through problems. And we struggled with, I think all school systems everywhere struggled with trying to broaden themselves out to meet those demands. It's hard to do.
Absolutely.
And so, yeah, it's something that we need to continually work at, I think, in
Yes.
order to do that. And so, very good education, of course, is the single biggest issue that state government runs. So absolutely a great issue to focus on. Now, looking at, let's look at the current governor a little bit, Brian Kemp. Kemp has liked to argue or like to state that Georgia is the best state in the country for business. Uh, uh, you can take that on if you like, but also, uh, what are some of the ways that you might agree with that, and what the job he's done, and what are some things that you think he's fallen short at, and some areas that we need to do better on as a state.
So I believe he's done really well at getting new business and big
Hmm.
business to come and make investments in our state. And I definitely feel like that's something that I would love to try to continue in that way. I believe there's a different way to go about diversifying that
Right,
aspect. Maybe not only data centers, not only,
right,
companies. Maybe we can diversify that a little bit. Um, but yeah, I think he's done an excellent job on that front. Another thing I believe has done really well is to build upon that pre-K program. Um,
right,
Adding to teacher salaries and that sort of thing. And I hope to just build upon that and, get to the next level of greatness, always trying
right.
for more. But I will say I did find it disheartening. I don't remember exactly how many years ago it was, a few for sure, where there was that terrible school shooting. And the policies, the laws that came into play after that were very reactionary to that. And I feel
Right.
like approaching things on a reactionary level is short-sighted. I believe I'd much rather assess things quickly once in office to be able to have the foresight, to be able to have the long distance thinking of preventative measures. Like I was talking about preventatively approaching bullying and that sort of thing. So
Mhm.
um, I feel like assessing things from that perspective will do better for avoiding terrible outcomes such as that.
Okay. Well, thank you. Uh, so let's see. Uh, when you look at, let's see, your race currently has 7 candidates in it. So that's a pretty big field. It's probably going to head to a runoff. I'm assuming there's going to be a runoff. So, uh, what advantages or disadvantages do you think you have compared to some of your other primary opponents? And you don't necessarily have to name people by name. Just, you can look at it just from your perspective. What is an advantage you have or advantages that you have over your primary opponents, in your opinion?
So from my perspective, I, it seems as though a lot of the other candidates are following the traditional line of campaigning, the
Mhm.
fundraising, the donations, canvassing, all the rest of it. I am not taking that approach, and I recognize that that might hinder my ability to win the election. But
Right.
I've also noticed that they are, by and large, it seems, lawyers, CPAs, small business owners that have already graduated to a sense of not really being a small business anymore. They're kind
Right.
of a medium stature business and already grown out of living paycheck to paycheck. There's a few, I believe, from memory, that are also sort of career politicians in the sense that they've done some sort of office before.
Right.
And so they're very familiar with the process. And so I recognize that a lot of that aspect might not help me, but I feel like actually I personally have wanted someone that's fresh blood, basically,
Right.
where
Right.
the completely new perspective hasn't done it before, isn't, you know, worn down from the system. I feel like there's
Yeah.
this is a very specific type of career choice where once you've been in it for a while, yeah, you may know how things work, but you also may not be more you might not be as willing to try new things, to think outside the box because there's a level of discouragement in doing that. And I feel like I'm willing to give it a go. I feel like I'm the one that I want to think outside the box. I want to be the creative thinker. I want to get to the point where I can talk to states around us and work together on things. I feel like there's no need to reinvent the wheel with some aspects. Like up north, for example, there's a regional greenhouse gas initiative,
Hmm.
and they had a whole collaboration between 10 states where they're going to lessen the greenhouse gas emissions and that sort of thing. And they've been able to fully utilize the benefits of working together. Specifically, Connecticut has created a green bank where they are able to offer loans through a quasi public bank, allowing using the benefits of this RGGI program and using other approaches as well, other funds and private investments in addition to that, to be able to create an avenue for funds to electrifying school bus fleets and creating adding solar power to schools to lessen the cost of energy for schools. And I just feel like there's a lot of ways in which we could do something similar in this area. And yeah, that might
Hmm.
be hard at first because other states might not be as willing, but I feel like
Right.
it's worth it to try. I feel like it's definitely worth it to try. And so things like that, I'm not afraid to try. I'm not, weathered by the system already where it's that doesn't feel like it's worth the effort. So I feel like
Right.
there's a lot of ways, yeah, maybe being in the system might give me some experience, but I'm more passionate and less jaded. And I feel like that could really help me in the long run.
Okay. And you mentioned that you're coming from a non-traditional background. I think, is this your first time running for political office?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, and it's not unusual that somebody uh that runs for a higher office at first. Not everybody starts at the school board level or something like that. So, but you are coming at it from a bit of a different angle
For
than
sure.
I think everybody else is. So,
Absolutely.
if you would be at the top of what's called the combined campaign, uh, which is all the statewide officers kind
Mhm.
of run together
Yeah.
as a ticket, and so you would be sharing that as the gubernatorial that word gubernatorial. I don't know that word just bothers me, but it is the word. So gubernatorial candidate, you would
Yes.
be our nominee, and you would be sharing that with Senator Ossoff. So, what would
Yes.
you see as some of the non-traditional ways that you could bring to the table that would help reach voters? Because ultimately, we all have to reach the voters somehow. So
Yeah.
what are some ways to do that, in your opinion?
Well, I hope to do that via social media, and doing interviews such as this. Um,
Well,
but I do know that I can fall back on some mass mailings and those sorts of things as a way to get my name out there and get
mhm,
people interested to vote. I know the primary
right.
is not always the most popular election to vote in, so getting
No.
people to the ballot box would probably be the most important thing. Um, yeah, I feel like just thinking outside the box in that way and using what's not going to be big fundraising and big rallies and that sort of thing. Um,
Right.
I feel very passionately about not wanting to owe favors of in any way in, to anyone. I want to make
Yeah.
sure that I put first and foremost the issues that will affect the majority of Georgians first. And I feel like the only way that I can do that in good conscience would be to not fundraise and not do the traditional campaigning route of donations, etc.
Okay. All right. So if you were to become the candidate and we move on through the school year, the political calendar here this year,
Hmm.
let's say you become the governor. Most governors in Georgia get reelected. That's been pretty much the rule. I think there's only been one in the last couple of decades that didn't. So a big issue that a lot of, especially Democrats, are concerned about in this state is reapportionment, redistricting, gerrymandering, that sort of thing. As governor, if you were to be elected in 26, you probably would be elected in 2030 again. What
Hmm.
would your stance be on how the state gets redistricted if, let's say, the Republicans are still in control of the General Assembly and they're wanting to redistrict it their way? How would you approach that as governor?
Goodness. Well, I don't believe that the whole gerrymandering as a concept is moral, quite frankly.
Right. Right.
So I know there are other states that I believe have used like a third party
Hmm.
options to be able to redistrict in a way that is more fair. Um,
Right.
I feel like that would probably be my go-to option without further research.
Okay.
I'm not sure what other options there would be other than attempting to pass legislation that might hinder favorability to one side or the other, but
Mhm.
I'm not sure exactly what that would look like off the top of my head.
Yeah, a lot of states use I guess you call them electoral commissions or something like that
Yeah.
to do it. Now, would you, as governor, if you thought the Republican, in this hypothetical, if you thought the Republicans were gerrymandering the state too much, would you use the power of veto to stop it?
Yeah, probably. Yeah,
Okay. Okay.
absolutely.
Okay. Well, and that's an important concept, I think, for a lot of Democrats. It is something that, um, well, any party that's out of power. Um, Typically worries about that sort of thing more than the party in power because they can't really do a whole lot about it.
Yeah.
But so that is something I think a lot of voters are concerned with in the primary, especially. So just wanted to get your ideas on that. And you've talked a lot about your issues, the education part especially, and some of the other the tax system. So we've covered a lot of the questions I have here for you. So as we get close to the end and we start wrapping up, I always like to give the candidate a minute or two at the end to sort of give us your stump speech. Why should we elect you to be our nominee for governor and the next governor of Georgia? So I'm going to let you close out by doing just that. Go ahead.
Well, I believe I'm not the most experienced candidate politically, but my life experience, I believe, is invaluable. And I plan to make a lot of changes that will benefit the majority of Georgians and all Georgians in a lot of ways. And I feel like that's probably the best reason because I'm not afraid to try something new. I'm not afraid to think outside the box. And I think the same old that we've been doing just isn't quite working. And it seems like a lot of Georgians are still struggling on the day to day financial aspects of life. And I am wholeheartedly passionate about absolutely trying everything to change that.
Well, Amanda, thank you so much for your time today. I do appreciate you coming by.
Thank you.
I wish you the best on your campaign. We are, let's see, we are, as we do this video, we are 6 days away from early voting
Yes, sir.
starting. It's like we just had a special election over here with Congress.
Yep.
This election year has not, it's like it never ends. And so this is just the next phase of it coming around. But yeah, 6 days to early voting. Then we have the election itself on May the 19th. So I wish you the best of luck in that. And I
Thank
hope to see you around the state in the near future.
Absolutely. Very nice to talk to you, Chuck. Thank
All
you.
right. Bye bye.